Welcome to Hero Villains. Thank you for always watching and supporting the channel. In your opinion, who will win in the confrontation between Human Torch and Pyro? Human Torch has the ability to self-ignite, control the fire at will, fly at supersonic speeds, and create explosions of temperatures up to millions of degrees Celsius, enough to melt even super durable metals. He can even concentrate the heat to create explosions like small supernovas, causing opponents to burn in an instant if they don't dodge in time. Pyro does not create fire, but controls it with his will through the fire-breathing systems attached to his costume. However, his mastery of fire shaping is almost unmatched. He can turn fire into virtual living creatures, fire dragons, flaming tentacles, or a series of other creative fighting forms, turning the battlefield into a living hell with extremely high surprise. Before we dive into the analysis, please hit the subscribe button and remember to turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thank you very much. Johnny Storm, an impulsive and passionate teenager, had a tumultuous childhood. He grew up in the suburbs of Glenville, where his passion for cars was instilled early in him. From an early age, Johnny showed an exceptional talent for repairing machines, especially car engines. However, his life was not smooth. His mother died in a tragic traffic accident, and his father was convicted of manslaughter, leaving Johnny without love and support. Later, his sister, Sue Storm, became Johnny's primary caregiver. By chance, fate brought Johnny to the life of a superhero. As a young man, he joined Sue, genius scientist Reed Richards, and pilot Ben Grimm on a secret spaceflight to test Reed's theories about the universe. However, they were bombarded by an unprecedented blast of cosmic radiation, causing an unforeseen mutation. The accident transformed Johnny's body in incredible ways. He could cover his entire body in blazing flames, fly freely through the air, and manipulate heat with precision. From a rebellious young man, Johnny became the Human Torch, a living symbol of power and inner combustion. He joined the Fantastic Four, fighting alongside his friends who had gone through life and death moments with him to protect the world from supernatural threats from the universe and other dimensions. Johnny Storm possesses the ability to ignite his entire body with plasma, turning himself into a living torch that burns fiercely in midair. When fully activated, his body glows like a miniature sun, emitting a red flame and tremendous heat. However, Johnny's ability to control fire is not simply a sudden power. He can adjust the flames to his will with exquisite precision and detail. He can completely extinguish or adjust the heat to manipulate flammable objects without destroying them. However, this ability is dependent on his state of consciousness. If he is unconscious, the fire will immediately disappear. Among the members of the Fantastic Four, Johnny is considered to have one of the greatest pure power. When pushed to the limit, he can create an explosion as destructive as a nuclear bomb. The explosion, known as a nova flare, not only incinerates a large area, but also creates a heat wave equivalent to a miniature supernova, enough to completely destroy a small asteroid if it makes a direct impact. Dr. Doom, the team's most dangerous enemy, has admitted that a full-power nova flare could wipe out half the population of an entire hemisphere in an instant. Human Torch. The heat emitted from his body is comparable to a supernova explosion, creating massive heat waves powerful enough to tear apart the outer shells of celestial bodies. Johnny has created an explosion powerful enough to completely destroy an active underwater volcano, causing the surrounding water to boil like a hellish storm. With his precision and power, Johnny can turn sand into glass in an instant. He has once burned and completely destroyed an entire mountain range with his concentrated heat. Johnny can easily melt sheets of molybdenum alloy over 2 feet thick, a metal with the 6th highest melting point of any element. The heat from his body is so intense that incoming bullets melt into the air before they can even touch him. Johnny's fire is powerful enough to knock out Namor, the king of Atlantis, who can take on cosmic beings. And on another occasion, he completely destroyed a meteor the size of Manhattan, disintegrating it before it could reach Earth's atmosphere. In his most powerful moments, he has incinerated an object the size of a planet, reducing it to ash in midair, causing his enemies to retreat in horror. Notably, he has destroyed Annihilus, a brutal entity from the Negative Zone, and his entire horde of invaders. The beings who once wreaked destruction on thousands of worlds were burned to the core by Johnny Storm's unforgiving fire. Based on these feats, his power could well be considered country level, even approaching continent level. The Fantastic Four have had many enemies over the years, but chief among them is Victor Von Doom, also known as Dr. Doom. Although Doom's main grudge is against Reed Richards, also known as Mr. Fantastic, He views the Human Torch through a similar lens due to his relationship with Richards, but rarely truly regards the young hero as a real, credible threat. Storm, for his part, does not trust Doom and will always oppose the Latverian monarch's many power grabs. Unlike many other superheroes, the Human Torch cannot claim more than a few direct arch-enemies, although he has fought some enemies in his solo adventures, such as Peter Petruski, also known as Trapster, the Wizard and Morris Bench, also known as Hydro Man. In addition, although Storm helped him revive his memories after a long period of amnesia, but All to Johnny is not just a hero with the ability to burn, but a living symbol of explosion, destruction, and noble sacrifice. I really hope you subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot, and moreover, you will see great videos every day. You are the best. Thank you very much. John Allerdyce, known as Pyro, is a mutant with the ability to manipulate fire with great precision. He cannot create it himself, but once he has even the smallest spark of fire, he can cause it to burn fiercely, projecting it in various shapes and sizes. With his deft hands, the fire becomes a living weapon, flexible like a fiery snake, undulating with his every move. With his fighting skills based on this ability, Pyro can cover the battlefield in a vast sea of fire or concentrate it into a precise attack, strong enough to melt metal and blow away armored vehicles. John was a student at Professor Charles Xavier's academy, where he trained with other young mutants in the hope of finding a balance between his powers and his personality. During his time there, he befriended Bobby Drake and Rogue. However, his impulsive temperament often clashes with humans due to his cynical view of society and his obsession that mutants will never be accepted as a normal part of the world. After a surprise attack on the Institute by William Stryker, a dangerous enemy with a mutant-killing ideology, Pyro, Bobby, Rogue, and Wolverine are forced to flee. They find temporary shelter at the Drake family home in the suburbs of Boston. However, in a fragile moment between life and death, Bobby's brother, out of fear and prejudice, calls the police. He reports that mutants are holding his family hostage, causing chaos. For John Allerdyce, the feelings of betrayal and hurt are deeply engraved in him, igniting a hidden anger and a rift within. He begins to question his beliefs. Pyro gradually leans towards his own path, where fire is not only his power, but also his voice of protest and choice. John Allerdyce let his anger get the better of him. He unleashed a torrent of fire on the police force, turning the patrol cars into red-hot iron that melted in a cloud of black smoke. The flames swirled around him like a tornado, causing everyone around him to retreat in panic. Pyro's eyes burned with a fierce glare, both challenging and screaming in silence. Just before the attack became uncontrollable and potentially deadly, Rogue intervened. Without hesitation, she rushed forward, reaching out with her bare hand to touch his ankle. In an instant, all of Pyro's energy was drained. He collapsed to the ground, exhausted and exhausted. The flames around him quickly dissipated, leaving the air thick with the smell of burning. However, the incident did not end there. While Xavier tried to get John back on track, Magneto watched from afar with great concern. He saw in John not just a rebellious child, but a repressed soul yearning for freedom of expression. Magneto, with his sharp psychological manipulation skills, quickly approached and planted the seeds of doubt and rebellion in John's mind. The appearance of Mystique, Magneto's trusted and loyal companion, further entangled John. They did not promise safety, but opened a path not limited by human laws. In the end, John Allerdyce abandoned Xavier's path and chose to follow Magneto, joining the ranks of the Brotherhood of Mutants. When Mystique took a healing arrow from Magneto, Pyro fired a blast of fire so powerful that it left no trace of the man who shot the arrow. A tense and conflicting development. John Allerdyce had a confrontation with his old friend Bobby Drake, also known as Iceman. The confrontation took place right outside a medical center where a serum that could inhibit the X gene, which was advertised as being able to cure mutants, was stored. Pyro's eyes when he saw Bobby were filled with not only hostility, but also the bitterness of a broken friendship. Although Bobby hesitated for a moment and stepped back with a bit of regret, John did not hesitate. He reached out toward the medical center, and with a single wave of his hand, a fierce fire erupted, burning the entire structure in a brilliant explosion, leaving smoldering black ash in the shadows of the afternoon. On Alcatraz, in the final battle between Magneto's forces and Xavier's mutants, Pyro appeared on the front lines again. When Magneto threw cars at his opponents like brutal weapons, it was John who fueled them, turning them into glowing fireballs that swirled in the air. The scene around him seemed to be a stage filled with burning fire and glowing metal, where he and Iceman faced off once again, this time not as friends but as enemies standing on opposite sides of the battle line. The battle was fierce, with fire and ice colliding in deafening explosions, each strike carrying both the past and regret. In an instant, Pyro gained the upper hand, forcing Bobby into a constant defensive position. But Iceman, with his unyielding will and his heart still believing in redemption, overcame his limits. He turned into ice completely, striking back with a decisive blow, knocking John out in a thick haze of smoke. Pyro has the mutant power to control and amplify fire, so he may look like a man with a flamethrower, but it is his power that cut with a flamethrower. The atmosphere is tense as a riot breaks out, led by a group of radical mutants, most notably Pyro, a fire-manipulating entity with great skill. Johnny Storm, a member of the Fantastic Four, is urgently summoned to stop the group's destructive plot. Their target is the central power plant, the source of energy for the entire city, where the lights from the high-rise buildings reflect on the sparkling sea. Pyro, with the ambition to prove the superiority of mutants over humans, controls the fire into terrifying shapes. Fire dragons coil in the air, walls of fire burn fiercely, surrounding Johnny in a cage of blazing heat. Johnny, with his body burning like a bright star, is forced to fall into a defensive position, dodging the fierce attack. Pyro's fire, although ferocious, cannot be self-generated and depends on an available heat source. Realizing this weakness, Johnny took to the sky, his body emitting an overwhelming heat, causing the surrounding air to vibrate. He circled high above, creating hot winds, depleting the heat source Pyro relied on. The city below, with its undulating streets of car lights and blaring sirens, became the backdrop for the tense confrontation. Johnny, determined to protect the people, fought not only with strength but also with strategy, gradually overwhelming Pyro in a battle of flames and wills. Pyro, a flame-manipulating entity with eyes burning with ambition, discovered a nearby fuel tank. He acted quickly, raising his hand to control the flow of heat energy, causing the tank to explode into a giant column of fire. The raging flames swirled, forming a crimson curtain that obscured vision, making the air suffocatingly hot. Johnny, despite his nimble movements through the flames, was still grazed by a sharp fragment from the explosion, leaving a slight wound that made him stop, a look of pain flashing across his face. Not letting Pyro gain the upper hand, Johnny focused all his strength, his body bursting out like a bright star in the night sky. He activated Nova Burst, an ultimate technique, releasing a terrifying explosion of heat energy, burning all the air within a small radius. The surrounding space shook. The blinding light swallowed the darkness, causing the nearby buildings to reflect a fiery orange light like a surreal painting. Pyro, surprised by the overwhelming power, lost control of his own flames. He was blown away by the terrifying heat. His body slammed into a concrete wall, smoke and dust billowing up. The shock knocked him unconscious, lying motionless among the rubble, while the fire he had created slowly died out. Johnny, exhausted, hovers, his gaze fixed on the city, where sirens and streetlights signal the return of peace, the Human Torch. He has won not only because he possesses superior strength, but also because he understands his opponent's limits and exploits his weaknesses with intelligence and decisiveness. While Pyro relies on an external source of fire to exert his powers, Johnny Storm is the source of the fire itself. He can generate destructive levels of heat, controlling fire with such precision that it seems like an extension of his own body. Pyro, despite his impressive pyrokinesis and ability to use fire as a versatile offensive tool, is limited by his dependence on his surroundings and his emotional imbalance. Johnny, on the other hand, has faced cosmic threats many times and has learned to keep his mind steady in the most extreme situations. With high self-control, great stamina, and rich combat experience, Human Torch easily overwhelms Pyro in a head-to-head confrontation. The winner is Human Torch. I hope you enjoy this fight. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Follow me if you like,